Hey, what's going on? It's KO Scary here with another story time. Today I'll be telling a story on how my teacher bullied me and I became an absolute badass because of it. Right, so that story took place, I was sharing what they would call a residential trip with another year because my school was poor and they couldn't afford that year to have my own residential trip. Now it's not like, it wasn't like a foreign residential trip, it was like outdoor adventure residential trip, so there was things like kayaking, canoeing, all this other bullshit, right? And there was, and I've got to be completely honest, right? The things he did say were true, but it's considered bullying because technically a teacher or a personal assistant or anything like that who is supposed to guide you would not be allowed to say this sort of stuff. Otherwise you could literally get him fired if you wanted to, right? But this took place in a KFC, right? Now I will admit I was a fat bastard, and you know what, I'll still run out here and I'll still say I am a fat slob sometimes, right? I'm not as bad as what I used to, but I did used to eat a lot. Now, it was called comfort eating. I was depressed, upset a lot, so I ate years ago to kind of comfort myself, to kind of stop other things from happening, all that sort of stuff. Right, so I finished my free meal, right? So the school offered a free meal for this KFC, right? And I wanted more, but I had my own money, so you know what? I thought I could buy more, essentially, right? And I bought more. Long story short, and then I sit down at the table, right? And this guy comes up to me. Now I think his official job title was personal assistant, right? Because I used to go to what they would call a special needs school, so there was a personal assistant in nearly every class, right? And I sit down, right? At this time, I went through an emo phase too, so I had long black hair. I was fat, right? I'm just going to throw it out there. I was fat, and the stuff I was wearing, nobody who has money would wear. Like, I was wearing a cheap pair of Airwalks. I just didn't look the best, honestly. I didn't even know what a shirt and tie was at that time, you know? So I sit down, and this guy's here, right? And he starts speaking to me. He's like, "Why the fuck did you buy more food?" Right? But he didn't say why the fuck, right? He said it in a more PG term, right? I'm just saying this because, you know, from where I come from, we swear all the time, right? Fuck, shit. You know, it's very difficult for us to not swear, and I know that sounds like an excuse, but there's a reason why these videos aren't made for kids. I can't help it. So, you know, he's like, "Why'd you get more food?" And I was like, "Well, I'm still hungry," right? And he comes up close to me and he's like, "There should be no reason that you're still hungry, right?" And I was like, "Well, I'm still hungry, right?" And like, I start getting pissed, right? Because he's up in my business, right? And at the time, I'm like a rebel, and see, I'm still like this now. I don't like when people question what I'm doing, because like you feel totally judged for it. And you know what, when I think back on it, you know, it was okay to feel judged about this particular thing. It's just I at this time felt even more self-conscious, right? So he walks up to me, right, and he's like, "Listen, this is the reason why you wouldn't be able to do any sort of sport," right? Now he chose sport in particular, right, because The man was a football man, right? But I'll give you a little bit of backstory on this guy, right? He was a secondary assistant coach, right, for the school's special needs football team. But I'll tell you this right now, he was not in shape, right? So in my opinion, he had no reason to tell me that sort of stuff. He was just exactly the same size I was. He was fat. He did not have a place to say anything. Actually, both coaches were kind of out of way. I don't really see why they were in a position to tell me anything, right? But he's like, you're fat, this is why, you know, your eating habits, this is why you would never do well in sports, and all this other stuff, right? Now, I become obsessed in things that I feel like I need to prove to other people, right? So this happened, right? And then I was like, you know what? I'm gonna prove this fucker wrong. Now, I don't think he would remember this situation, right? Because he's old and he's, you know, he just wasn't the best looking for himself. Now, at the end of this story, I still didn't look the best, but I was certainly the best at the particular sport I chose to be good at. So I was like, there's no way I'm going to be good at football because, let's face it, I'm not good with my legs. You know, and in all the other sports that everybody else is good at, it's all to do with bullshit. Like, we have over here rounders, and I just didn't feel like that was competitive enough. Right, so I took a year of judo. I got kicked out of judo, but that's for a completely different story. I, you know, ended up going to basketball, right? And I really liked the basketball coach, right? His name, let's call him Jackson, right? His name was Jackson, right? And he was also a coach for a junior basketball team over here in the UK. And you know what? It made me believe that I could be good at something, even though I was fat, I was overweight. So I decided to train. Now this is where this is going to sound like some Rocky Balboa shit, right? But I basically became so obsessed with the sport that I would play when it was raining, when it was sunny, when it was snowing. I trained harder than I've ever trained in my life, and I was still fat, right? Because basketball, you don't lose a lot of calories when you play basketball, right? It's more of a skill sport, so that's why you see most of your professional athletes still going on the treadmill and all this other stuff, right? So I end up proving the guy wrong, right? Now, their school football team, right, ended a year earlier than they expected, right? And I was leaving that same year because I decided I was going to leave a year early too, to go study at college and go study sports, because at that time I wanted to be a coach, right? Now this was all to prove something to this guy, right? And I don't usually feel like I have to prove anything towards anybody, ever. And I'll always remember this day, right? I'll always remember it. Even if other people don't remember, I'll always remember it. Right? The man's football team was about to come to the end, and he was like, what other sport is people good at? Now, I used to train for, like, I used to take a basketball club at the end of lunch sessions and all this other stuff, right? I used to teach it, and then I teached it a little bit during my college course, but he was like, basketball, yeah, and I know exactly who he asked, right? He comes over to me, right? And he starts trying to ask me, you know, like next year if I could be this captain of the basketball team, and he was going to try and get a basketball team together, and I was just like, nah, I'm leaving next year. Right? It's a bit late now. Right? Now, I'm not gonna lie, my responses were a bit mean. And you know what? Like, I just didn't want to do anything that the guy told me. And simply I proved them wrong. So the short story is, if someone tells you you can't do something, prove them wrong. Because you can. Anyways, I don't have enough gameplay for the rest of this video, so I'm just going to put all my socials that I usually have down in the description, and my book Love Only Blossoms once every autumn. Right? I hope to see you guys in the next video. Peace out.